What's up everybody, it's Robin Gaming here. So, my bad, this video was long overdue. I'm sorry it took so long for my top 25 games of all time to continue, but we have 10 games left and I think all that I'm really gonna do is go back into it and finally finish this thing off. We're now finally arrived at the top 10, so let's simply do this one to final part and start talking about my numbers 10 until number 5. So, yeah, let's start off with number 10, and that is one of my childhood games, one of the games that I really grew up with. That was, I think, one of the first games I've ever played, really, on one of my first systems I've ever owned, which was the Game Boy Color, and the game I'm talking about is Pokemon Silver. What can I really say? I was just a huge fan of Pokemon in general, the entire franchise as a kid. I just remember, you know, talking to all my friends back then, and everything would be Pokemon, you know, we didn't just like playing the games, but we also liked watching the TV show and collecting all the merchandise that they had for it, the trading cards, and all that type of stuff. Like, I was just a huge Pokemon fan, and as a kid I was completely lost into that world, acting like I was a Pokemon trainer myself, I guess. Really, that's just all that it was. And, you know, the Game Boy Color to me was one of the first systems I bought. I think I bought it from my cousin, who was kind of done with it, and he gave me this game with it, which was Pokemon Silver. And all there is really to say about it is this was the start of me playing video games, really, and that all started with Pokemon. I still have very, you know, warm feelings towards the franchise, but I'm not like a huge fan of it anymore or something like that. I don't play the games anymore, actually. Although I am interested with the Nintendo Switch getting its own Pokemon game. I'm definitely interested in you know, maybe playing that once it comes out, because, yeah, like I said, I do still have those warm feelings towards the Pokemon franchise. Just really that this is something I was obsessed with as a kid, but not as I grew older, I guess, not really so much anymore. I played Pokemon Silver and then Emerald and stuff, and that's kind of where it ended for me as far as the games go. So, yeah, number 10, Pokemon Silver. Absolutely awesome memories that I have of that game. At number 9 is gonna be a Metal Gear Solid game, and of course, one of the kind of like requirements I gave myself before starting this series is that I was only gonna do one game per franchise. And with Metal Gear Solid, this is one of those things where that's a very hard thing to do. I just didn't want to clutter this list with all these games in the same franchise, because that would go at the cost of like so many original games that I'm missing on the list. So at the end of the day, I had to make a choice, and with Metal Gear Solid I was really picking between 4 and 5. I thought 4 was the one that really like ended the franchise off amazingly well. This was a series that I only started playing just like 2 years ago, and it once again, it was a great experience to me, and Metal Gear Solid 4 was just an amazing ending to that series. But at the same time, the one I picked ultimately was Metal Gear Solid 5, because it was the game that, although you can look at it as being completely different from the other Metal Gear Solid games, and therefore also it felt really stupid not to be able to mention Metal Gear Solid 4 in this list, because I could only pick one, but it was so different because this was a gameplay driven experience and not in any way story driven. That's not what it was about, that's not why I enjoyed the game so much. But at the same time, Metal Gear Solid 5 was a game that I played just a few years ago, and I just put, you know, over 100 hours of time into and absolutely enjoyed a lot. I just love the game for what it was, and it is to me still just one of the most satisfying gaming experiences ever, where I have never seen a video game that was, especially being third person and open world, where it had such amazing controls and such satisfying gameplay, and it just felt like a blast to play. This is really, to me, perfection as far as gameplay systems go. Really, like it was absolutely fantastic in that regard, and all I can do is commend Kojima, because I find that crazy. I find it crazy that I didn't even enjoy the other 4 Metal Gear Solid games for the gameplay that much, and I felt like they were kind of clunky as well. I really played those for the story, and then Metal Gear Solid 5 comes around, the story is kind of like whatever, the gameplay is absolutely amazing and one of the best gameplay experiences ever out there for me personally. That's absolutely awesome, and that's why it goes at the number 9 spot for me, Metal Gear Solid 5. So at number 8, this is a very kind of like personal pick, a game that I've talked about a bit in the podcast episodes, I think, as well. You know, the old Sick Brothers Magna podcast. This is a game that I played the shit out of on the PSP, my very original PlayStation Portable, which I sunk so many you know, hours into. And the game I'm talking about is Pursuit Force Extreme Justice. It's kind of like, this is a game that not many people will know, I think. That's also why this part in particular is going to be quite interesting. I have a lot of games here that are very personal to me. But Pursuit Force Extreme Justice was this game that it was the sequel to the original Pursuit Force, which I also really loved. And the concept of it really was that you're this cop who's going after bad guys, and the great kind of like idea, the great concept of the game that made it stand out so much was that you could jump from car to car. So most of the levels would consist out of just, you know, driving a lot and racing towards enemies. And then the great thing was that, yeah, you could just with the tap of a button jump to another car, shoot the bad guys and go back to your own car, and that way do crazy stunts. There were awesome boss battles, and it's funny because I kind of compare it to what Uncharted is nowadays and why I enjoyed that game. It's crazy to realize that Uncharted has very similar gameplay sequences to what this game had. It was a on-foot third-person shooter that at the same time had the racing and the well, I guess it was more of a racing game, but it did have the on-foot sections too. And then as far as the racing goes, it's just very comparable to that Uncharted 4 set piece in Chapter 11 or whatever, you know, where you're just jumping from car to car and shooting bad guys as well. Not just that, the protagonist kind of looks like Nathan Drake, and he has a blonde wife, and he has a mentor kind of person who's much older than him. It's crazy when you compare it that way, but this was a game that I simply have great memories of playing, you know, as a kid once again on my PlayStation Portable. And I wonder if anybody else actually played this, because it's not a game that sold particularly well, and sadly the studio that made it you know, got completely, yeah, pretty much it doesn't exist anymore. You know, all the people there got fired, and that was sad to see because I really loved the game for what it was. It was an awesome PSP exclusive, so yeah. At number 7, oh man, this is a game that I find so hard to talk about because the weird thing about it is that I remember it so well. In my final years of primary school, everybody was playing this. Everybody was talking about it, sharing their experiences, what they had done, what they had collected, which levels they had gotten and stuff. And then it's this crazy thing where in the first year of high school, once you move on to that, all of a sudden it became cool to hate on it, and it became cool to hate on anyone who was still playing it. And the game I'm talking about is RuneScape. This actually still is a relevant game that is being streamed a lot on Twitch, and that still is played by many people, which is to me very weird to realize, but I didn't think it would have that long legs. But yeah, this was the start of the, to me at least, the MMORPG genre, and just a game that I've sunken so many hours into, that I played together with friends, where I interacted with so many people online, where I started learning English probably because of it too as well, really well. And it was it's also so weird because you look back at it now and it's just this very simple, like, point and click type of RPG game where, you know, it's about trying to max or maximum level your all the skills that you have in the game, and you do that in a very simple way. Like, think about the fact that there is a skill called wood cutting or whatever it's called, right? And all you do is just click on a tree and you just wait for your character to cut that tree and to get you the logs and stuff that you need, and you move on to the next tree. It's really weird and it's so boring when you look at it right now, but a lot of people still play it and love it for what it is. And once again, it's one of those first experiences where, you know, where it felt like, yeah, I was playing in this massive world together with so many other people, and that was what was awesome about it. I just have great memories of RuneScape once again because I made so many online friends there, and I got to know so much about gaming, and yeah, just the very first actual multiplayer type of experience that I've ever had. So that was absolutely great. I remember having level 99 in thieving, so yeah, got that skill cape. Anyway, let's move on to number 6, and that to me is The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Of course, I don't need to tell you that I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. And so it's another one of those things where I remember just having a friend who was also obsessed with Lord of the Rings. We talked about it all the time, and we played this game together on the Game Boy Advance, where just to be able to play it together in co-op, man, I remember that. You used to have this cable that you needed to connect to both the Game Boys, and that way you could play together. Crazy when you realize that right now, where we just live in this time where, you know, online is of course how everybody plays their games, and the fact that you need a cable to play together is something completely, you know, unthinkable anymore in this day and age. But Lord of the Rings The Two Towers was this sort of like, it wasn't even necessarily a really great game, and I'm not talking about the PS2 version, which many people really love. I'm talking about the Game Boy Advance version, which was more of a top-down RPG game. And, you know, I looked back some of the reviews, it didn't get the most amazing reviews, it was a very basic game, but once again, I think being young, you kind of managed to look past that, and you can still enjoy a game very much for what it is, for the setting that it has, and, you know, for the gameplay. Like, I've beaten this game probably like 10-20 times or something like that. No matter that other people called it basic, I really enjoyed it for what it was. And one of the great things about it, I think, is that you really had like 5 different campaigns with different characters that you could pick, and you would have you know, new levels and stuff that you wouldn't actually see if you were playing with other characters, and that was really awesome about it. So weird thing as well that you only had 4 save files when there were 5 characters in the game, including a new game plus feature. So that always bothered me about it, but at the same time, fantastic experience that, you know, yeah, once again, one of those few games, and it counts for a lot of the games I've mentioned in this particular part, that really started me out with gaming in many different ways. From Pokemon Silver to RuneScape to Pursuit Force and this Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, they were all just different games that I played being a child, and that had a huge impact on me that way, and therefore really taught me the basics of gaming and you know, what was going to come later on as well, when I would finally move on a lot to the console, I guess. So yeah, that was my new part of the top 25 games of all time. I really hope you enjoyed it, everybody. Let me know if you did, and of course, make sure to support me on Patreon if you really enjoyed these videos, because that way, not only do you make it possible for me to make them and to actually bring you these videos on YouTube, but you also get a week early access to them. So if you want to find out what my actual top 5 games of all time are, which we're going to discuss in the very next part in a month from now, then make sure, of course, to become a Patreon supporter and get it a week early. But for now, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed the memories that I share. Let me know if you yeah, if you played any of these games, of course, as well. I would love to hear your stories personally. And then for now, I'd like to thank you a lot for watching, and hope to see you again next time.